goal of this project, Diversifying the Digital Historical Record, was to take a look at the role of community archives in the larger national digital platform.
We have these 4 forums, first in Los Angeles, then New Orleans, then in Evanston, Chicago, and now here in New York City. And each of these forums really have the local community and the local community archives represented so well.
The value for collecting and protecting documents connected to African American historical perspectives, and also collecting archives and material culture is super important for the African American communities.
Community archives serve an incredibly vital and important function in sharing stories from communities that have often been marginalized or excluded or overlooked.
I think many of the predominantly white institutions that we have inherited and that many librarians and archivists work for have done a terrible job at collecting the histories of communities of color.
Documentation was relegated to the domestics and servants, but I found a strong community in the North Shore where there were doctors, lawyers, business owners, churches, clubs, and organizations as early as 1855.
A lot of the hurdles have to do with how libraries have set up these larger aggregators, these larger digital efforts, so that we require something like pretty robust digital infrastructure in order to participate.
Another thing that we're seeing is one in terms of resources or lack thereof. A lot of the participants in the forums are saying that they're not digital ready at this time. It's not even something that they're really thinking about because they have materials that they're just trying to process.
My experience of a community archive, which is an archive without an institutional affiliation, without major funding, without regular staffing, for us integrating into sort of a national digital initiative is a very high bar.
We happily have a lot of documents to go through and sift. Our capacity to sift through those documents is limited by the people who can access them. What are the appropriate ways for us to partner with community archives and coming up with some real concrete next steps?
One of the most powerful ideas that has arisen out of these forums came for me at the New Orleans forum, where it became clear that what community archives across the board do want is a platform to share resources. So we want kind of a more formal network of other community archives practitioners and a space where we can put our deed of gift, where we can put our best practices for digitization, we can put our workflow processes to share amongst each other.
Community archives themselves are as diverse as the communities that we reflect, and so it's interesting to see both the shared challenges and the shared kinds of experiences that we have, but also the incredible diversity of experiences and challenges that we have as community archives.
Through coming to at least Forum 3 and now participating in Forum 4, I'm able to meet with those who had the same ambitions as mine, the same missions as that I have for preserving records and documents of African American communities in Chicago. And I'm learning these best practices through people who are trained in these fields, those who have the passion to want these records to become available to the public.
How do we help influence funding entities to really expand or broaden the thought process where monies can be allocated? It's fine and dandy to keep funding major institutions to sustain what they're doing, but there are a lot of startup organizations that for a fraction of granting money can actually produce quite a lot of good content that can be shared with the rest of the communities.
And so taking a look at community archives who may not have the ability, the capacity, the staff, et cetera, to fully engage with some of these digital projects. We wanted to see why that was and perhaps how some of those things can be corrected so that we can give a fuller, more complete look at our national digital history. So this project has been funded by the Institute for Museum and Library Services. We've put together a great group of community archivists, academics, funding agencies, and library and archive supporters who have come together in these 4 national forums to take a look at a lot of the issues surrounding both digitization, but also the digital capacity of community archives.
you.